Jesus doesn't come just to save individuals. Rather, in Matthew 4 and Luke 4, what we see is that Jesus has come to bring that new birth, that new liberation to an entire people, namely those Jews who are oppressed and crushed and impoverished at the hands of their own religious elites, as well as at the hands of the occupying Roman Empire. And so the gospel then is this expression of liberation. It is this expression of bringing hope to those who are hopeless. I love the way that the great Black American theologian James Cone puts this in his book, God of the Oppressed. Here's what James Cone says. He says, "And yet the Christian gospel is more than a transcendent reality, more than going to heaven when I die to shout salvation as I fly. It is also an imminent reality. A powerful, liberating presence among the poor right now in their midst, building them up where they are torn down and propping them up on every leaning side. The gospel is found wherever poor people struggle for justice, fighting for the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." When he says that the gospel is with every poor person who is struggling for justice and fighting for the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, James Cone is saying, in no uncertain terms, that the gospel is for here and now for Americans who are poor and crushed and struggling and beaten down. And that is our task. Our task as a church is to take that gospel, that essence of what Christ embodied, and to retranslate it in a way that makes sense for people today. And just like Christ, to invite them into that encounter with God. The problem is that we tend to take that gospel, and instead of inviting people into the divine presence of a liberating God, we have this tendency in America to take that gospel and turn it into a formula. Just like that gospel tract, to give it 5 points and an illustration and a pre-written prayer that you can pray and be taken care of. And then we take that gospel and we brand it, we give it a slogan, we give it a logo, and we mass produce it for consumption on a wide scale, and we sell it for a profit. And the problem with commodifying the gospel in that way is that when the gospel of Jesus Christ just becomes another product that you can buy off the shelf, it has the exact same effect as all the products that we buy every single day. Every new gadget, every new service that you buy into, every new subscription that you tap into always carries that tantalizing promise of freedom and liberation from all of your mundane existence. But at the end of the day, those consumer products end up ruling us. They end up locking us in a prison of eternal, endless, unsatisfying consumption. And the problem is when we turn the gospel into that kind of product, we completely rob the gospel of its power to bring about new birth and transform our lives. The gospel then becomes its own kind of prison. Suddenly, what we're inviting people into is not an encounter with the liberating and divine presence of God. What we're inviting people into is just another beautiful prison with stained glass walls that require that we think a certain way and speak a certain way and believe a whole list of things in order to be considered right and good and acceptable to whatever that particular church considers right and good and acceptable. And we should not be surprised that today people are leaving that prison faster than ever. The question in this series, of course, is why church? Why should we expect anybody to be a part of a church in today's day and age? And my answer to that question is we can only expect people to be a part of church if church ceases to be just another beautiful, commodified prison, and instead becomes a group of people who have been liberated in their lives because of their encounter with a divine presence. And because they have had an encounter with the divine presence, they are able to bring that same liberation to other people who are oppressed and poor and broken and crushed under the heels of the prevailing powers in our society. That is our job. And to the extent that we as a church at the Oceanside Sanctuary can perform that job, to the extent that we can with authenticity say, yes, I have encountered something greater than me and it has delivered me from my bondage, unless we can say that genuinely and truly, then we really have nothing to offer other people, because that's the heart of the gospel.